My phone filled up with messages on a Tuesday night in March, 11 of them in under an hour, and not one of the people sending them had spoken to me since the winter I turned 22. I was 31 when it happened, sitting in my car outside a Shoppers Drug Mart in the East End of Halifax because I'd just finished a 12-hour shift and didn't have the energy to drive the last 15 minutes home. My phone buzzed against the cup holder, then again, then a third time before I even picked it up. My father, my older brother, my aunt. Numbers I hadn't seen on a screen in 9 years lighting up one after another like a chain reaction. I read every message in the parking lot with the engine still running. Not one of them said sorry. Every single one said some version of "we need you." 9 years earlier I had packed a duffel bag and a milk crate of kitchen things into a 2014 Corolla with 190,000 kilometers on it and driven out of Antigonish, Nova Scotia. At 11 o'clock at night with $420 in an envelope my grandmother had pressed into my hands on the back step. But before I tell you about that night, I need to take you back further, to the Thanksgiving that actually broke things, 'cause nothing about leaving was sudden. It had been building for years. It just finally had a date attached to it. Thanksgiving 2017. Our house smelled like turkey and pine sol because my mother always scrubbed the bathroom before company came, like the gravy itself depended on it. My father's hatchback sat in the driveway with a coat hanger holding the muffler up. Something he'd been meaning to fix since spring. My younger brother Callum was home from his second year at St. Mary's, the first person in our family to get past a year of university without dropping out, and my grandparents and aunts and uncles, and a rotating cast of cousins, filled every chair we owned, and half the floor besides. I was 22. I was working the front desk at a dental office in town, 6 days a week, and taking 2 online courses at night toward a business diploma I was paying for myself, dollar by dollar, out of a checking account I never let anyone see the balance of. I'd just been approved for a small scholarship through the local Rotary Club. $900, not life-changing. But it was the first time anyone outside my family had looked at what I was doing and said this is worth investing in. I hadn't told anyone yet. I wanted it to feel real first, just for me, before it became something the family had opinions about. That night, my father stood in the kitchen doorway with a Keith's in his hand and announced that Callum had made the dean's list. The room came apart with noise. My Aunt Bridget actually clapped both hands over her mouth. My grandmother said praise God like we were in church, instead of a kitchen with mismatched chairs. My father's face. And I want you to understand, this was not a man who let his face do anything without permission. Broke open into the kind of pride I had spent my whole childhood trying to earn and never quite managing. I clapped too, I meant it. Callum worked hard. He deserved every bit of that applause. But then my father turned, beer still in hand, and said, mostly to the room but loud enough that I knew it was for me, "Good to see one of you doing something with your life." He didn't look at me when he said it. He didn't need to. Later, after the dishes, because I always did the dishes, every holiday, it was simply assumed. I sat at the kitchen table with my grandmother, who everyone called Gran Bessie. She was the only one who ever stayed in the kitchen with me while I worked, instead of disappearing into the living room with the football game. "I got the Rotary Scholarship," I told her quietly, drying a roasting pan that didn't need drying anymore. Just so my hands had something to do. She reached over and put her hand flat on the table next to mine. "Tell me everything." So I did. The application, the interview, how I'd cried a little in the church parking lot after they called my name. She listened the way she always listened, like the rest of the world had gone temporarily quiet just for this. "You're going to do something with this life of yours," she said. "I've known it since you were small. Same as I know when the weather's about to turn." 3 weeks later, my father found the printout of my course registration on the kitchen counter, where I'd left it by accident, half buried under flyers. He didn't ask me about it, he told me. He said my cousin Travis had gotten himself into trouble. Something to do with a truck he'd co-signed for, and a debt he couldn't cover, and that the family needed to come together. He used the words "come together" the way people use a tarp, only after the rains already started falling on something they should have covered sooner. He said $2,000 would fix it. I said no. The temperature of the room changed in about 4 seconds flat. "After everything this family's done for you," he said. I looked at him across that same kitchen, where I'd made supper 4 nights a week since I was 14, where I'd covered the bell bill twice the winter he was laid off from the mill, where I'd driven Callum to hockey practice for an entire season after Dad's truck got repossessed, and nobody ever once said thank you, because it was simply what I was for. And I asked him, as level as I could manage, what exactly has his family done for me? He told me I was selfish, cold, just like your mother, he added. And that one landed exactly where he meant it to, because my mother had left when I was 6 and not one of us had heard a word from her since. He knew precisely what that comparison would do. It did it. Within the hour the calls started. Aunt Bridget. My cousin Shauna. A husband of someone's I'd met exactly twice in my life. Each one circling back to the same line. Family comes first. I was being selfish. Travis could lose everything. Not one person asked what I'd been saving the money for. Not one person had ever asked. That night I packed my duffel bag. I tucked my debit card into my coat pocket, and I went and sat on the edge of Grand Bessie's bed and told her I was leaving. She didn't try to talk me out of it. She got up, went to her dresser and pulled an envelope out from under a stack of folded handkerchiefs. "I've been holding on to this," she said, "for exactly this. $420. Years of birthday 5s and 10s she'd been quietly setting aside without telling a soul. I pressed it against my chest like it might disappear if I let go too fast. Then I held her instead. "You call me the second you land somewhere," she whispered into my hair. "Somewhere with decent light in the kitchen." I drove out of Antigonish a little after 11 that night. I didn't have a destination so much as a direction. Away, and then further away, and then Halifax because I ran out of nerve to keep going past it. I slept in the Corolla for 3 nights, in a Tim Hortons parking lot off the Bedford Highway, brushed my teeth in the bathroom. Paid $18 a month for a Good Life membership, so I'd have somewhere to shower. I filled out job applications on my phone with 12% battery left, sitting in the dark so I wouldn't have to spend gas idling the heater. On the 6th day, a small physiotherapy clinic called me in. The office manager, a woman named Odette Marchand, looked at my resume for maybe 30 seconds, looked up at me for 10, and said, "You drove here alone from Antigonish. Why?" I gave her the short version. She hired me that afternoon. $14 an hour, part-time, cash for the first 2 weeks because payroll hadn't caught up yet. Full-time within 10 weeks. I won't pretend Halifax was easy. I ate a lot of Kraft dinner with frozen peas stirred in to feel like I was doing something for my health. I split a 2-bedroom apartment in the North End with 2 women I found through a Facebook housing group. One of them practiced trumpet at midnight, which is its own kind of test of character. And the other, a woman named Yasmin, became the closest thing I've had to a sister. She's still my person to this day. Back home, from what reached me in fragments through Grand Bessie's careful phone calls, my father told people I'd had some kind of episode. That I wasn't well. That the family was worried sick. He used the word breakdown at the Legion. Grand Bessie told me once, and I could hear how hard she was working to keep her voice level. "He doesn't get to make you small from this far away. Don't you let him?" I didn't. But it cost something, not being able to defend myself to people who'd already decided what I was. There's a particular kind of grief in that, being talked about in a place you can't walk into and correct the record. So I decided to build a record instead, where the talking didn't matter. By the 2nd year, I'd enrolled in a business administration program, through a partnership with Dalhousie's Continuing Studies Division. Evenings and weekends, paid for in installments I tracked in a notebook, like a budget I couldn't afford to fall behind on. I worked mornings at the clinic, studied nights at the kitchen table, while Yasmin quizzed me on accounting terms over shawarma. From the place 2 blocks down that started throwing me in free garlic sauce. After Yasmin helped the owner's daughter with her English homework. That's the kind of family you build when the one you were born into fails you. Small. Chosen. Loyal in a way that doesn't ask for collateral. I finished my diploma in 2021. Odette came to the little ceremony and brought a bouquet from the Sobeys flower section that she pretended cost more than it did. Yasmin made a sign so wide she had to fold it sideways to get it through the doors. Grand Bessie called from her landline the second I texted her a photo, before I'd even left the building. "I knew it," she said. "Same way I know the weather." 2 years after that, I moved into office management at a growing dental network across 3 locations. By 2025, I'd been promoted to regional operations lead. The youngest person to hold the role and the only one without a university degree behind it, which meant I had to prove everything twice and was forgiven nothing. I didn't mind the weight of it. I'd been carrying weight my whole life. At least now it came with a salary that let me put a little aside every month. Real aside, not survival aside. I bought a small townhouse in Dartmouth that spring. Narrow, a little crooked on its foundation, but with a kitchen window that caught the morning light, exactly the way Grand Bessie always said to look for. I didn't tell my family any of it. Then came the Tuesday night in the Shoppers parking lot. My father, Callum, Aunt Bridget, cousin Shauna. Numbers I didn't recognize that turned out to belong to relatives I'd only ever seen at funerals. 11 messages. No missed calls. Because I'd blocked those numbers years before, after the 3rd round of guilt calls, tried to talk me into coming home for good. They'd gotten my new number through a mutual contact. I still don't know who, and at this point it hardly matters. I read every message in order. Engine still idling. Callum's first text was almost casual. "Hey stranger, long time. Call me back when you get a sec." By his 4th message he was asking whether I'd consider co-signing a loan for a small landscaping business he wanted to start. His credit, in his words, was still a work in progress. My father's messages were shorter, harder to read between the lines of. He'd been diagnosed with something in his spine that needed surgery, and his benefits through the union had a gap he couldn't cover on his own. Aunt Bridget wrote 3 long paragraphs about the meaning of family before getting to the actual point, which was Travis again. A different debt this time, a different kind of trouble. I read all 11 messages twice. Then I called Yasmin. They found me, I said. Which part hurts the most, she asked. None of them said sorry, I told her. That's the part. What none of them knew, what my father had absolutely no way of knowing when he typed those messages, was that I'd been confirmed as a keynote speaker at a small business, healthcare conference in Halifax, in 5 weeks. A conference my company's network had been invited to present at, written up ahead of time in a regional business newsletter, with my name, my photo, my title attached. Grand Bessie had seen the little write-up and, not meaning to start anything I think, just because she was proud and 81 years old, and had been keeping that pride to herself for 9 years, sent it along to Shauna. Shauna showed my father. That's how they found me. Not magic. Just pride leaking sideways through a family that doesn't know how to hold it quietly. I almost called the conference organizer to back out. I held the words I need to withdraw in my mouth for a long minute, parked outside my own townhouse with the porch light on. Then I thought about Grand Bessie standing on that back step in her slippers, watching my taillights disappear down the road at 11, at night 9 years before. I'll be there, I told the organizer instead. The conference was held in a hotel ballroom downtown on a Thursday evening, a couple hundred people. Clinic owners, healthcare administrators, a few people from the provincial health authority. I got there early and walked the empty room before the chairs filled, the way I always do before something that matters. I found Grand Bessie already seated near the front. Yasmin had driven her in from Antigonish that morning as a surprise, which undid me so completely, I had to redo my mascara in a hotel bathroom stall for a full 5 minutes before I could face the room again. My father sat 3 tables back, Callum next to him, Aunt Bridget on the end. They'd driven nearly 3 hours, which told me exactly what they thought this evening was going to be for them. My father wore his good shirt, the one he kept on a hanger for funerals and not much else. He looked older than I remembered, and smaller in a way that had nothing to do with how tall he actually was. When the host introduced me, my title, the rural outreach program I'd helped build for clinics outside the city, the small scholarship fund I'd quietly set up through work for students from towns like mine, I heard the applause start, and underneath it one voice, clear as anything, Grand Bessie saying yes, 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 like punctuation. I gave my remarks. Workforce retention in rural healthcare, the gap between what small towns need and what they can usually offer. I was prepared, I was specific. I did not look toward my father once, because I wasn't speaking to him. Near the end, I paused. I grew about 3 hours from here, I said. Some of you in this room probably know my family. The room went still in that particular way rooms do when they sense something personal coming. I left home at 22 with a duffel bag, and $420 my grandmother had been saving in secret, because she understood, before I did, that I was going to need to go. I didn't leave because I didn't love where I came from. I left because staying had stopped being something I could afford. I let that sit a second. I've learned that the most important thing one person can do for another, sometimes, is simply protect them long enough to let them become who they were always going to be anyway. Someone did that for me. Her name's Bessie Doiron, and she's sitting right there. Every head in that ballroom turned to find her. She put both hands over her face. Her shoulders shook. The applause ran long, longer than any conference applause has a right to. Afterward, my father found me near the coat check. His face was doing something I'd never once seen it do. Several things at once, none of them winning out over the others. You did real good up there, he said. Thanks, Dad. A pause that went on too long. I didn't know. He started, then stopped himself. I know you didn't, I said. You never asked. He looked down at the carpet. The surgery, he said. I got your message, I told him. I'll think about it. That was the truth. It was also the entire amount I had to give him that night. Callum caught my eye from across the room and nodded once. Not a thank you exactly. More like I see you now. The first real acknowledgement he'd given me in 9 years. I nodded back. I walked Grand Bessie out to Yasmin's car myself, her hand small and dry in mine, the porch-light glow of the parking lot catching on the little gold cross she's worn since I was as a baby. How are you feeling? She asked. I thought about it honestly before I answered. Like I've been carrying something for 9 years, I said, and I finally got to set it down in a room full of witnesses. She squeezed my hand 3 times, the way she always has, her way of saying, I love you when actual words feel like too much weight for the moment. In the weeks after, word moved through Antigonish the way it always does in a small town. Slowly at first, then, all at once. People who'd heard my father describe me as unstable for 9 years now knew exactly what I'd been building while he was busy saying that. His own brothers heard it from someone at the rink. He never did ask me to co-sign the landscaping loan. Neither did Callum. Again, About a month later, a card arrived in the mail. My father's handwriting, careful and a little unsteady, like a man writing something he doesn't have much practice writing. I should have stood up for you back then, and I didn't. That's on me, not you. I'm not asking you for anything. I just needed you to know that I know. 8 sentences. No excuses tucked in around the edges, no ask hiding underneath it. It was the most honest thing my father had ever given me in my entire life. I put the card in the same drawer, where I still keep Grandbessie's envelope. Empty now, but still holding the shape of $420 and an 11 o'clock goodbye on the back step. I haven't called him back yet. I haven't thrown the card away either. I'm 31 years old. I own a narrow little townhouse in Dartmouth with a kitchen window that gets good morning light. I have a best friend who once made a sign too wide to fit through a set of doors. I built a career out of a Tim Hortons parking lot, a Good Life membership, and $14 an hour, and I have Grandbessie, who has always known things the same way she knows the weather, before anyone else does. Here's what I want you to take with you, if you've made it this far. There's a real difference between help me and I'm sorry. One is a transaction, the other is a beginning. You can't skip past the second one to get to the first, and still expect someone to open the door for you. You are not selfish for needing that difference to mean something. You are not ungrateful for knowing exactly what you're worth, and you are not cold for finally understanding that love, without any accountability attached to it, is just obligation wearing a warmer coat. The bravest thing I ever did wasn't leaving at 22. It was staying still enough, 9 years later, to let them come find me on their own, and being clear-eyed enough by then to tell the difference between people calling for a rescue and the one woman who'd quietly been building Maka the whole time, without ever once asking me for anything in return. So I'll leave you with the same question I sometimes ask myself, late at night, in that kitchen with the good morning light. If someone who hurt you called tomorrow, after years of nothing, what would you actually need to hear before you picked up? Help me, or I'm sorry. Sit with that for a second. The answer tells you everything about where you, Cecily, stand.